Now, my understanding was that Cash was in Washington State not because he was trying to abandon the family, but because he was under orders from the U.S. government, the
Yes,
U.S. military.
yes, that's where he spent, I think, 3 to 4 years there. She chose not to move to Washington State. She chose to stay behind, in the home that they had purchased together there in Illinois with the children. But in that time that he was stationed there, I think she only flew out with the children to visit him maybe once.
That's a shame.
You know, of course, then whenever he would get leave and go home to Illinois, he had all the honeydews to do, because he'd been gone so long. So
Right.
it was, and of course, that I wouldn't blame her. I'd have a list of honeydews too, because
Right.
some things I just can't do,
Right.
and I got that. But their marriage didn't end in a good way, and it made me angry with the military whenever she was calling his commanding officers and saying all these things that he's being called in front of the commanding officer for now. Allegations, nothing was ever proven, but at no time did any one of them step forward and say, this man is a good person.
Right.
We're going to look into this, because my point of view, if you're a young man or woman in the military and your mind is being traumatized by what's happening in your life, you are not a good soldier.
Right.
You are not a well soldier.
Right.
And so that should have been eliminated.
Yeah, and that's a very important point that you're making. Military readiness, because if you're over in, say, if you were in Iraq or Afghanistan, and your mind is all concerned about what's going on, false allegations, everything else, are you going to be able to support your battle buddy on your left and on your right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And, in fact, because you are so distracted, you may have other people getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
When you should be focused.
Exactly. And to me, I find it really kind of criminal on her part, because she's inflicting undue and unnecessary pain on one of our soldiers.
Right.
One of our people.
Yeah.
Who's out there ready to sacrifice his life for this country.
Right.
And that should be respected. Our military should not allow their members to be abused and traumatized through family courts or anything else.
Right.
They're out there standing up for us,
Right.
We owe it to them.
Yeah. And as you've mentioned that Cash, he served 20 years honorably discharged, and yet any allegation brought against him, they almost accepted as true without any evidence.
Absolutely. Did not have to have any evidence whatsoever. Just, a woman in Illinois can wake up tonight or whenever and say, I think I feel kind of scared of him today, and go right on down to the police department and say, yeah, I'm not feeling safe with him today. I think he's going to come home and beat me. Well, that's enough to get a protective order.
Right.
That's all you got to say.
Yeah.
You're afraid.
Yeah. You say that, you get a protective order, and what accompanies it is that you now no longer can see your kids in many instances.
And it starts a complete chain reaction of many bad events to come.
Right. And I think part of the reason I wanted to come out here is because, in addition to your health, but this is Veterans Day, and this tomorrow is Veterans Day. Well, yeah. And I mean, we have so many veterans that go through this stuff, and we kind of we pretend like it doesn't happen. We say we love our veterans, and yet we also have abandoned our veterans in family courts. And this is a great evil in our society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like with Cash, whenever he was out to sea, stuck on that submarine for Lord only knows how long at a time, no matter what branch you're in, those men and women out there, their heart is always at home with their family.
Right.
What gets them through what they have to go through are the pictures in their mind of their children and their wives, their husbands, their parents, their loved ones.
Yeah.
And too many times these boys and girls come home and they're damaged by things that has happened or that they've witnessed.
Right.
Only to find that all that time they were dreaming of coming home to their family, that family didn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
It had changed.
Yeah, yeah. When you talk about the soldiers, the sailors, the Marines being out there thinking about their family, the first time, I went to, of course, to basic training at the beginning, and I was apart from my family for 4 months. And my son, who was very young at the time, I mean, he'd be saying things to his mom to say like, Daddy, you can come home if you'd like to, if you don't want to, but I'd like to, if you want to come home, you can come back home.
Right.
And then, when I remember when they came down to meet me in Monterey, the Defense Language Institute, and, my son at the beginning did not recognize me. He was very small. He was still young, and he just didn't recognize me. And then, it's been 4 months. Who is this guy in a sense? But then he did remember.
Mm-hmm.
And he reached up and hugs you.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to Korea the first time this was right during the Gulf War and everything, and the image that was plastered in my mind is that I have to get on this plane,
Mm-hmm.
and I see my wife and my son and my daughter up there, not knowing where Daddy's going,
Right.
why he's going, when he's going to be back.
Right.
And for a little child, a month, half a year is a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
For the guy out there, it's a long time too, or the woman out there.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely. And I think about, Caden had more time with his dad because he was the oldest.
Right.
Well, Colby's the oldest, but
Mm-hmm.
that was from Cash's first marriage.
Right.
But, Caden had more bonding time with Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And Kaylee didn't, because I believe Kaylee was maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks old before Cash was able to make it in. He was
Mm-hmm.
out on the sub. And so they didn't have that immediate bonding. And that is most important.
Right.
When a baby is born into the situation like that, Dad's gone, or Mom's gone, and they're missing that first initial bonding.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that has hurt Cash the most, is knowing that he doesn't have that same bond with Kaylee.
Mm-hmm.
They had developed a wonderful bond, but it wasn't the same as with Caden, because they were denied that time. But that had nothing to do with family court.
Right.
That was just circumstantial.
Right.
Right.
And that can happen I hear what you're saying there. So tell us a little bit.